Happy Wednesday, Dog Nation. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Harrah's Cherokee Casino Resort. Wednesday is good news. That means we're one day closer to the big one on Friday between Georgia and Cincinnati, the conclusion of the 2020 season on the first day of 2021 as the Dogs look to take down the Bearcats. We'll have a lot on that on today's show, including Mike Griffith coming up in just a couple of minutes. We'll also look back at some of the things that Georgia quarterback JT Daniels and the Dogs offensive coordinator Todd Monken had to say yesterday, both in terms of what we expect to happen against Cincinnati and what could be in store for the Dogs in 2021. I'm also going to look back briefly to something that Kirk Herbstreit said about the Dogs a couple of days ago, which I think sets us up really well for what could happen on Friday in the Peach Bowl. So it's a busy show. I'm really glad you're a part of it. It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Harrah's Cherokee Casino Resort, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Harrah's Cherokee Resort. Find us online at Caesars.com/Harrah's-Cherokee.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So like most of you, the other day I was watching the college football playoff announcement, the selection committee revealing its, top 25, top 4, and I was kind of sitting there, obviously knowing that Georgia wasn't going to be one of the 4 teams. I was just kind of sitting there sort of half plugged in. I was interested in the show, but not on pins and needles the way that you would be in a year in which Georgia was in true, legit contention to be one of those top 4 spots. But also, like many of you, there was a moment during the show where I was, whoa, that was kind of interesting. I'm sure many of you remember it when Kirk Herbstreit, the ESPN analyst, and they were kind of just filling time before the top 4 was announced, and this was very weirdly received by some people on social media. I'll have more on that in a moment, but they're just kind of filling a little bit of time before those top 4 are announced, and one of the things that Herbstreit kind of just sort of said off the cuff is, I'll tell you right now, the team you don't want to play is Georgia. Now, he also mentioned Oklahoma in that same vein because the way the Sooners had concluded the season, they ultimately won the Big 12, but Herbstreit said, let me tell you what you don't want to do right now. You don't want to play JT Daniels in Georgia. You don't want to do that. Right now, that team is playing really hot, essentially suggesting that if there was an expanded playoff, if there was, room to make room for more than just the 4 teams we were discussing, obviously, a team like Notre Dame that was coming off a loss and Texas A&M that had lost its game to the team that would have played had it gotten slid into the 4 spot, just as a way of kind of filling time, Herbstreit said, well, if you're looking at the teams who are playing the best right now, maybe you would include Georgia in one of those teams. And what was really interesting is the reaction that some of this got from social media. There was, I think, a sense in which that people thought Herbstreit had lost his mind. It's almost as if a lot of people just hadn't really been paying attention to Georgia. And I kind of understand that. Georgia, once JT Daniels became the starting quarterback, this is after the Florida game. That was the game that really mattered for Georgia. That was one of the highest rated games of the season on TV. That was the put up or shut up moment for Georgia. Georgia didn't put up, and therefore, listen, folks are busy. They can only focus in on a couple of games per week. It seems like a lot of folks stopped watching Georgia after that, and maybe they don't quite realize just how much better Georgia got after that game against Florida once Daniels was inserted in as the starting quarterback. The big numbers that he put up against Mississippi State, the easy win that Georgia got against South Carolina, the dominant win that Georgia got to close out what unfortunately ended up being Georgia's last regular season game against Missouri. Now, it is certainly fair to say, and there are plenty of non-Georgia fans who may be watching or listening to me right now who would say this, that BA, those games don't matter. That was just Mississippi State, and that game was closer than it was supposed to be. It was just South Carolina. It was just Missouri. Missouri went out and lost to Mississippi State again the following week after playing the Dogs. Those games that Kirk Herbstreit was apparently impressed by, those games were of very little consequence. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I do think it's interesting, though, that Herbstreit took that to the ESPN airwaves during the playoff broadcast to say, I'm kind of impressed with the way that Georgia's playing right now. And in doing a little research on this, because I did want to mention it on the show, I guess I've kind of found the genesis of where all of this started. And I've cited this podcast before, the podcast that ESPN produces that Herbstreit's a part of. David Pollack's on there a lot. They have a little bit of a revolving cast of characters, but Pollack and Herbstreit are on there frequently ahead of the SEC and other conference championship games and ahead of that final playoff announcement. Pollack kind of was talking to Herbstreit about the situation with Georgia, and I don't know this for sure, that this is what led to Herbstreit going on TV and saying the team you don't want to play right now is the Georgia Bulldogs, but there's at least reason to believe that some of this may have started with what I'm about to play for you. Here is from the ESPN podcast. This is probably a little bit more than 2 weeks old now, but Pollack kind of also making his case for Georgia, them being different with JT Daniels, and Herbstreit's response to that. Let me let you hear a little bit of this from the ESPN podcast.
Here's a question. Would you put that team over an Iowa State or a Cincinnati?
You're talking about Georgia on just the way they're playing right now?
Because here's
if you put them on a field, field.
Yeah, just if they played Florida again, there's no doubt I would pick them to beat Florida. I mean, I'm not saying that their defense would shut them out, but obviously they're healthier and JT Daniels playing quarterback. I just think.
No, I mean, if you're just looking at how teams are playing at the end of the year, obviously Georgia with Daniels in there has looked very, very different.
So listen, I think that's really compelling. And Pollack says, don't call me a Georgia homer on this, but I'm telling you right now, if Georgia and Florida played again with JT Daniels as the quarterback for the Dogs, Pollack says, I would pick Georgia to win that game. And I can't tell you how much people who are not Georgia fans hate all of this stuff on social media. They'll go after Pollack over this. They'll go after Herbstreit, what he said there on ESPN. There is a lot of just anger, I guess is the word, about the fact that a school like Georgia is being touted here after having lost 2 games at the expense of, and Pollack mentioned it, the team that Georgia will play on Friday, Cincinnati, with them being undefeated. That's a fairly common social media argument amongst college football fans anyway. The reason why I play all of that and say all of this in the show here today is I really think that's what's at stake for Georgia going into the Peach Bowl. They have a chance to prove Kirk Herbstreit right for what he said on ESPN television, and David Pollack right for what he said on the ESPN podcast. They can validate to say, yeah, with JT Daniels, we did become a better team. And you can say South Carolina that we beat up on wasn't very good. You can say Missouri that we beat up on wasn't very good. You can say that if you want to, but we've had everybody tell us that Cincinnati as an undefeated team was supposed to be really good. There's plenty of people on TV who said they should have been in the college football playoff, and we went out there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium on that New Year's Day, and we went out there and we beat them too. So therefore, this does validate the improvement that took place at Georgia away from the watchful eye of many college football fans in November going into December. I think that's really interesting for Georgia heading towards the end of the week here. And obviously, we played audio of Kirby Smart talking about this. Connor Riley came on the show yesterday to say that he thought with an impressive win, Georgia had a chance to maybe make a case for itself, being the preseason number 1 team in the country as you head towards 2021. We'll wait and see how all of that plays out. But there's no doubt, whether it's in kind of an exaggerated sense or in just kind of a realistic sense, that some of what Georgia does this upcoming week on Friday against Cincinnati will be at least a little bit of a springboard for 2021. And there is no doubt that the curiosity amongst many fans is related to will the Georgia offense play as well against a defense, at least for Cincinnati, that's on paper a little bit better than some of the ones that Georgia was playing against lesser SEC foes near the end of the season. And you can showcase some of what Georgia might be able to do in 2021. So let's have some fun here with this for a moment, because I thought yesterday when Georgia quarterback JT Daniels and Georgia offensive coordinator Todd Monken met with the media, they did kind of allude to this being just the start of what Georgia might be able to do offensively. And it seemed like at times early in the season, and there could be a number of reasons why this was true. The health status of Daniels may be the most prominent issue there, but one way or another, unlocking all of the potential that Georgia had offensively was something this program was not able to do in the early going of the season. But maybe we're seeing the start of that here at the end of this year, heading towards next year. Fun to think about, a chance to show it against Cincinnati. Here is Georgia quarterback JT Daniels on that topic.
There's a lot of talent on the roster, and there's guys that as fans, not many have seen yet. So people seen Arian Smith make 1 catch. Jermaine's growing a lot. You have a whole young group of O-linemen that work every day. I've got to see him grow. Guys like Cedric Van Pran, see how they attack the game. I think you have a really good class of young guys that aren't just talented, but are also guys that, enjoy the game of football, and, they show up every day with a good attitude, and that, they're here to learn and get better. So it's something good to see, and something I think you'll get to see, as they grow. You'll see a lot of it next year.
I think JT Daniels is really good at talking about stuff like that. I think he has a really fun perspective on not only his own game, but his teammates there as well. I think he articulates that very well in that statement. And when Georgia offensive coordinator Todd Monken spoke yesterday, he also echoed a similar sentiment that the best could be yet to come for this Georgia offense, and we may see some evidence of that against the Bearcats on Friday. Here is Monken.
It's exciting. I did, when I first got here and I saw some of the young skill players, some of the freshman wideouts and the backs that we had, I thought, I think we have a chance to be really good on offense. I don't know when it all comes together as a staff, and when do I do it better for our players? When do our guys mature? George is still a young player as well. When those guys start to mature a little bit. But we are excited about not only the guys that will be playing on Friday, but the young players that we've got, especially at the skill positions, that as we're able to move forward, and a guy like JT, who's certainly capable of distributing the ball and understanding where we want to go with the football. So it's an exciting time.
I love the fact that Monken, who is not the kind of person who's typically given to too much hyperbole, uses the word exciting there several times, talk about what might be going on with the Georgia offense. It's obviously one of the main reasons that folks are planning on tuning in on Friday. Georgia fans already know what JT Daniels brings to the table. There could be a lot of folks who are not Georgia fans who watch this game as kind of the lead-in, the precursor to the college football playoff. They may themselves be very surprised about how much more explosive Georgia looks now than it did even just a few weeks ago before Daniels was at the helm. But there's also a potential plot twist for the game on Friday. People hate when I say this, but it is true that if you look at the opponent that Georgia's facing on Friday, Cincinnati, statistically speaking, a pretty good defense. They did have some problem with the rushing game, though, against Tulsa, if you want to go back to the AAC championship game back on December the 19th. Tulsa's leading rusher that day had over 100 yards, averaged 4.6 a carry. Another guy averaged 8 yards a carry on 9 carries for Tulsa there that day, if not for 21 yards worth of sack total for the Cincinnati defense. You're talking about a Tulsa team that knocked on the door of 200 yards rushing against Cincinnati there. So it could be that Georgia's cushion in this game against the Bearcats does come down to the running game, which I know people don't want to hear. I know they want to see Daniels go out there and take this offense for a spin, and obviously I hope to get a chance to see that too. But one way or another, it's a chance for Georgia to show against what by almost any measure is a better opponent than the Dogs have been playing, that Kirk Herbstreit was right, that David Pollack is right. This is a better team now with JT Daniels as the starting quarterback, and it's the kind of thing that could put the rest of the country on notice for 2021. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. And good to have you with us, no matter how you get to us today. We are not on the radio today at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rev. We'll be back there tomorrow. They are airing the Oconee County State Championship game here today, so good luck to the folks there as they head towards that state championship, and listen to that on 960 The Ref. And, of course, we'll be back with them tomorrow. But for those of you on video, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, podcast, all the various platforms, thanks for being here. And let me just say thanks so much for our friends at Harris Cherokee Casino Resort for making it all possible. 2 great locations, both 2 hours from Atlanta, whether it's the original Harris Cherokee Casino Resort property or the Harris Cherokee Valley River. These are great getaway destinations for you with delicious dining options, a tremendous gaming floor, world-class shopping experience if you need that kind of getaway, a tremendous relaxing spa to enjoy. It's all the things that make the Harris Cherokee Casino Casino Resort properties, famous and well known, and you need to make sure you check one of those out as we head towards 2021. You deserve a getaway. You deserve some fun. Harris Cherokee Casino Resort provides that for you, and it's only 2 hours from Atlanta. Also, to get the best experience possible, make sure you become a Caesars Rewards member. That's the way to get the features and benefits that our friends at Harris Cherokee Casino Resort love doling out. So to find out more about that, go to this website. It's Caesars.com/Harris-Cherokee. That's Caesars.com/Harris-Cherokee. That'll help you find out a whole lot more about our friends at Harris Cherokee Casino Resort, both their properties in the beautiful mountains of North Carolina. It's Mike Griffith here coming up in just a moment. Before we do that, though, let's go around the doghouse, delivered today by Marco's Pizza. And a moment ago, you heard a very interesting comment from former Georgia great, now I would say a very successful analyst on ESPN, David Pollack, who said, listen, I think right now Georgia's playing better football than Florida is. If that game was played again, I would pick Georgia to beat Florida, Pollack says. And you presume, based on what he said, and you heard the audio yourself a moment ago, that JT Daniels is the reason why. Now this, for a lot of Georgia fans, will remain a source of frustration because it just sort of, to some, and admittedly maybe even from time to time myself, seems like, well, if Daniels was healthy enough to play the Mississippi State game, and he did the things against the Bulldogs that he did that day, then it stands to reason, at least to some, that maybe he could have been healthy enough to maybe give it a go against Florida 2 weeks prior to that, and maybe the woulda, coulda, shoulda for Georgia of what would have happened had Daniels played in that game. Maybe you could have actually found out by seeing Daniels do battle with Kyle Trask and the Gators there in Jacksonville on that particular stage. Yesterday, Todd Monken was asked that directly, and he went into detail about some of his thought there on that. You can't say that he ducked the question, although maybe he didn't give quite the answer that some Georgia fans would have wanted. This is Todd Monken on that subject.
The pandemic obviously was a setback in terms of his rehab, and then getting him here was probably the best thing we could do. He can speak a little bit more to that. All he did was work his rear end off to try and get healthy, to learn the offense. He's a rare individual in terms of loving football and studying the game. And he didn't get his opportunity early on. He can speak to, again, his health, but he was eventually healthy, but he requested to go down to the other end and continue to work. Obviously, you can't give everybody reps, but what he did is continue to work and compete. And when his opportunity came, he took advantage of it.
You know, I've for the most part made peace with this topic because when you've heard JT Daniels' father speak, for instance, Daniels himself, the couple times that he's spoken about this, I think the Daniels family, have been pretty clear and articulate about this. It's obvious that JT Daniels was not healthy for a long while for Georgia. And I guess the one frustration that I would have remaining, and this truly is no one's fault, even though at times I don't think that Smart has been as forthcoming about this as he could have been. But the one thing that I think you're left with is, what if the schedule that we understood in the summer had been maintained? What if Georgia had the bye week that it was supposed to have the week before the Florida game? Would that have given Georgia more of a chance to regroup and evaluate JT's health once again? And had the bye week come before Florida, the way it was supposed to, as opposed to after Florida, the way that it turned out to be because of the coronavirus outbreak that the Gators dealt with, could you have gotten a different situation and a different chance to evaluate JT Daniels there? We'll never know. It's too much of a hypothetical to even get a true answer on. But that is one of the lingering questions I guess I have with that, is how things could have been different for Georgia if the schedule that Georgia was facing during the season didn't ultimately get changed. But interesting stuff from Todd Monken. We'll actually hear more from him even on tomorrow's show. There is a lot to break down about everything that the Georgia offensive coordinator had to say. For now, though, that's Around the Doghouse, delivered today by our friends at Marco's Pizza, America's most beloved pizza. Real, authentic pizza made the Italian way. We love it. It's delivered contactless, touchless to you after being baked in a 450-degree oven. So good peace of mind, healthy and safe when you enjoy some Marco's pizza. Also, lots of great options for there. Whether you want the pizza in a bowl, which is like the great flavor of pizza without the crust, or one of the great varieties of the specialty pizzas like the deluxe, the garden, or the all meat. You can actually get one of those specialty pizzas right now for just $13.99. You can order today on the Marcos app or online at marcos.com. All right, before we're done, we're going to preview a lot of the big bowl games that are going to take place over the course of the next couple of days, including the Gators tonight against Oklahoma, Florida facing some opt-outs, and an underdog against the Big 12 champs. We'll talk about that and so much more. But for now, on everything happening around UGA, let's talk to our buddy Mike Griffith here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Harrah's Cherokee Casino Resort.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Really good work from Mike Griffith on the pages of DawgNation.com the last few days with all of the coverage and the lead-up to the Peach Bowl on Friday between Georgia and Cincinnati, a game that I think is certainly rich with storylines. I'm looking forward to previewing that with Mike right now. Mike, welcome back here to our program. First time you and I have gotten a chance to talk in a while, but I'm glad to have you as a part of our broadcast.
Good to hear from you, man.
Absolutely. Before we get too deep into the Peach Bowl, let me look back at yesterday. I thought yesterday was a fun and interesting day. We've heard from JT Daniels a couple of times. I think he's really good with reporters. It's always interesting to hear what he has to say. This is our first time, though, to hear from Todd Monken since all of the drama, both good and bad, that's unfolded during the 2020 season. What did you make of that? Pretty interesting press conference between two pretty pivotal figures for the Georgia offense. From Daniels, from Monken yesterday, what were your key takeaways?
I love Todd Monken. I mean, he's such a straight shooter. I loved it when he said, we had all these problems, but nobody gives a blank, right? I mean, he gets it. He totally gets it. He could sit up there and moan and groan that, well, I got hired to bring in this new offense, and I changed, and then I didn't get to put any of it in, and we recruit this quarterback from Wake Forest, and I can't really teach him the offense via Zoom, and so I can't really name him the starter, and we kind of figure out that he's not really the guy in May, so forget the first 5 months of the year, and so we have to get this guy in from California. Thank goodness he picked us, but then he's not held. I mean, he didn't sit up there and play the violin. Right, he didn't do that, and look, we've talked this to death. What could have been, what should have been. Now to your point that the schedule is different. You're right, BA. Look, I said at the beginning of the year this loaded schedule was a huge disadvantage with the new offense, and I don't think any of it. I don't believe anything's by accident. I just don't. And it was just the cards were not dealt Georgia's way, and then the Kentucky game and the injuries. I mean, it's just. Sometimes you just can't force it. It's that perfect date, and your date has the wrong order, and she spills wine on her dress. Well, this just ain't gonna happen. It just wasn't supposed to happen today.
Mike, you sound like a man speaking from experience.
And complaining and whining about it, he says, "Hey, I like where we're at. We're moving forward. I like these guys." He called it out. There were guys jumping on me for not getting Georgia the ball. You bet, we sure were. And now he is, right? So. I love the way Monken commanded that press conference, and he just looks like the kind of guy, the kind of no-nonsense leader where that offense is in great, and you can see why JT Daniels gravitated towards him. And so I thought it was very revealing, and I'm glad Georgia fans got to see that, and I think it's great for Kirby because, Kirby's been trying to lift this whole program on his back for 5 years, and he's done a remarkable job. They're on the verge of their fourth straight top 10 season, and if Kirby has got another brain and another leader in the room like that, I think it makes it that much. Because I think that's been Saban's secret. Saban's had a lot of great coaches filter in and out of there that have helped him carry on Alabama. And it's about time that I think Kirby's got a guy like Todd Monken in the office with him that can really help him lead this program into the future.
Your analogy about a date goes wrong sounds like a man speaking from experience. You have a date go bad recently, Mike?
I'm a single guy for a reason. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking him to the wrong restaurant. I can't figure it out.
Well, I will say this, and I think the point you just made is a pretty good one. And listen, Smart has every right to keep his cards close to the vest when he speaks, and he's got a strategic reason for doing that. I would assume he doesn't owe me, too much when it comes to that. I'll greatly acknowledge this, but It was nice yesterday, Mike, to hear a conversation about the Georgia offense, and I say this with all due respect, that was tethered to reality, that, referenced the good and the bad, and you just talked about Monken saying people were on me for not getting George Pickens the ball. That is a real conversation. You and I have had that on this show. Georgia fans have had that wherever they gather. The fact that Todd Monken acknowledges reality on its own terms and says, I'm aware of this, in a way, that was just kind of nice to hear. The Georgia conversation we heard yesterday, led by Monken, and obviously Daniels was a part of that too, sounded a lot like the conversation that the average fan has with his or her buddies, and that to me was a refreshing, breath of air, if you will.
Well, let's just be honest. Kirby's been ornery, all right? He's an ornery guy right now. He's an angry guy right now. He's lashed out at the media. You can only imagine what it's like in the building. But let's be fair to Kirby Smart. We're asking Kirby Smart, when I say we, I mean the general public. I'm talking about the college football world. We're saying, Kirby Smart, you were one play away from beating Alabama in 2017. Now get back there. And nothing else is good enough. There's just not a lot of room for upward mobility when you're Kirby Smart. It's either win it all or, well, you're not there yet. I mean, you've reached that point. This is a very difficult place where programs get. And I saw it at Tennessee. When they won the 98 title, they went back in 99 to the same place. Awesome location. I know y'all been out there, Fiesta Bowl. Great time, downtown Tempe. They were playing a really good Nebraska. Should have been exciting. Nobody went. The next year, 2 years later, they're playing Michigan. Orlando. Oh, my gosh, Tennessee, Michigan. Great showdown. Nobody showed up. They were getting – South Carolina was getting bowl bids. Auburn was getting bowl bids over Tennessee because Tennessee wasn't showing up. Because once you win it all, everything else is a disappointment. And that's a danger. That's very dangerous, especially for a young coach like Kirby Smart. I mean, look, the guy's only 45 years old. It's only his 5th year. My goodness, people, give him some time. But he feels the weight of this on his shoulders every day. And I think it can work against him a little bit that he's a bulldog. Because for another guy, it's a job. And there could be another job out there. But Kirby bleeds red and black. He wants this more than anybody. He internalizes. He obsesses. So when he hears me and you, BA, every day, and this is our job, we inform and we give opinions, he's heard enough opinions. He knows what he did wrong, okay? He knows Stetson Bennett wasn't going to be. He knows. Yes, I know he wasn't the guy. We know. Yes, the defense got confused. Yes, Sark foxed me. He wakes up every day in that reality, and people are on him about it. And yet, he's on the verge of going 8-2 with a 4th straight top 10 season and putting more guys in the NFL and having a team that's going to be in the preseason top 2 or 3, maybe with a Heisman Trophy quarterback. But at the end of the day, Kirby knows he's fallen short of that incredibly high goal. And then here's the really tricky part, and we've got an off-season to talk about it, and we will. What changes do you make? You say, well, you do this. Well, no, wait a minute now. Right now, if we were going to rank Georgia right now, forget all the games. If you were just going to have a 16-team tournament right now, I'd see Georgia 2 or 3. I think maybe Alabama ahead of them, but I don't know if there's another team playing better football than Georgia right now. So that being the case, how many changes do you really make when you're that close, right? So this is where it gets tough. Coaching changes, scheme changes, personnel, transfers. How much do you really fool with this? How broken is it really? So these are the stressful decisions, very stressful decisions that he's under a lot of stress right now, and that's what I've recognized. And I want Kirby Smart to get some time off soon because he has had a very stressful year, and yet he's on the verge of delivering yet another season. I think Georgia fans could be a little disappointed, but at the end of the day, you got to be proud. When it's an off year and you're on the verge of a top 5 season, I mean, that says a lot where this program's at.
So, you talk about the way that Georgia's playing right now. We've obviously played some audio of guys like Kirk Herbstreit, David Pollack saying the same kind of stuff, and admittedly, I'm enjoying it, and I'm obviously excited what that could mean for the upcoming season. But, Mike, I will also say there's a part of me that wants to see this team now validate that against, and I do think Cincinnati's better than Missouri. I think Cincinnati's better than South Carolina. I think Cincinnati's better than Mississippi State. These teams that this version of Georgia with JT Daniels has played prior to this, I do think that there's a little bit of an onus on Georgia to go out there and prove that on Friday. It's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the Peach Bowl. As happy as I have been with the results as of late, and the Missouri game was incredibly entertaining, as happy as I've been with these results as of late, I do think there is a little bit of pressure, maybe the wrong word, but I would say obligation to go out there and now validate this against a team that at least has a better ranking and a little bit better statistical profile. I think it's nice for Georgia to get a chance to prove this against what to me looks like a step up in competition.
Sure, and I think they will. And I think it's big that Aziz decided to play. I mean, it sends a message, right? Tyson Campbell's out there, Malik Herring's out there. Jordan Davis. Boy, big number 99. Like I said, he's number one on the Georgia wish list for next year. I think JT's coming back just based on his history and who he is and how he's conquered everything before he's moved on. I mean, you heard talk about guys going pro early. He went college early. He left after his junior year of high school, but he won the national championship at Mater Dei. They beat everybody. They beat everybody across the country. So, he was. That seems to be his MO. It's like he wins it all and then he moves on. But Jordan Davis, 99, I mean, to me, that's the guy that Georgia's just got to have back. I mean, he's just got to have back. If you get 99 back, it's like you play with 12 guys on defense instead of 11. I mean, he's that much of a difference maker. But to your point, I absolutely think, listen, the game is in Atlanta. It is in these guys' backyard, okay? And I just can't see whatever this Bearcat thing is. I don't even know what it is. Is it like an angry tomcat or is it a bobcat hybrid or something? I don't know. But I just can't see that animal coming into Atlanta, into the backyard of so many of these players where their parents and friends and family in a building where the dogs are so hungry to win. They've lost a lot in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and it hasn't been pretty. The SEC championship game losses have been gut-wrenching. The national championship is a dark memory. This is an opportunity to go into that building and stake your claim and make your statement that no, Cincinnati, you are not going to put that bulldog head in your weight room around a national championship banner like Central Florida did by beating Auburn 3 years ago in the same game. Georgia is not going to be your patsy. Kirby Smart's guys are not going to roll over for some AAC, whatever, whenever that conference came in existence. That's not going to happen. There is a reason that you were not recruited by SEC schools. And Georgia will remind you of that at noon on Friday.
Well, the one thing I definitely think, and I've talked about this a lot this week, is this notion that somehow Georgia and the players, the coaches, viewing itself as the big bad SEC team who turns up its nose at Cincinnati. First of all, there's never going to be a Georgia player who says anything close to that. The Georgia coaches obviously avoid that kind of stuff too. And for a lot of the reason that you just laid out, I assume that Georgia has plenty of motivation here. You can go back and say what you want about Auburn versus UCF a couple of years ago. Frankly, I don't really know what the mood around that game was because I wasn't there. But this notion that somehow Georgia wants to do anything less than play its best first in Cincinnati, Mike, I don't buy that for a minute, and I don't believe you do either.
No chance. These guys are locked in. They are going to pulverize whatever's in their path. They want more football. You know how we're talking. You know how Georgia fans are thinking about it. You don't think these guys are having the same conversation? You don't think those Georgia guys watched that Florida LSU game and threw something at the TV or put their fist through a wall and said, God damn, that should have been us. These guys have had to chew on that all year, and they have just ran over teams. If they could play 10 more games this year, they would. So these guys, Cincinnati is an obstacle. They're in the way. There will be, these players that didn't have senior. Vanderbilt figured it out. Let's give Vanderbilt credit, okay? They may be scared to play, but they're not stupid. If Vanderbilt would have showed up at Sanford Stadium, 5 or 6 of those guys would have left on a stretcher. All right, Georgia was going to demolish. It was going to be really ugly. It was going to be very ugly and very physical. And Vanderbilt, they do have good education. They were smart enough to say, you know what? Let's take that game off. Probably a good idea. I didn't think it was very courageous. I'm still disappointed they did it, but honestly, I can understand why, because Georgia would have killed them. And now Cincinnati gets all that aggression and all that pent-up anger. And the guys that are going out, BA, it's an opportunity to put down some more tape. And the guys that are coming back, it's another step towards what I believe is going to be a really special 2021 season. There's going to be some guys that are going to get out there that have an opportunity to play with Monty's not playing. He's had the foot all year, and Eric's not playing. And look, Eric's a sprinter. He's a fast twitch guy. I understand. And Ben Cleveland's had a shoulder. There's going to be some other guys get plugged in that are going to have some opportunities to do something, just like we saw Lewis Seen do last year. Lewis Seen arrived last year. All right. Now this year he's on the map. Like Kyle Pitts will never go over the middle with the same aggression as he. He has changed Kyle Pitts' life. All right. Kyle's just like, no, coach, don't put that play in playbook. I don't run anymore. The Lewis Seen arrived in this game last year. I think Zamir got some confidence out of this game last year. There's going to be some guys that are going to emerge and do some things in this game. I look for Darnell Washington. He's my arrival guy this year.
So I wanted to ask you about one more thing before we let you go. Before that, let me remind folks that Mike, of course, coming to us from the Classic City right there in Athens. If you want a taste of the Classic City, but you're not in Athens yourself, go to any retailer, wherever you do your shopping, pick yourself up some Classic City lager, 6 or 12-pack cans. It's available year-round. It is a craft-style lager beer, an incredible flavor, a lighter-style beer, so it makes it fun, easy to drink. We love our friends at Classic City Lager. It is good cold beer. And if you're getting ready to watch the game on Friday or enjoy some New Year's Eve fun from the comfort of your home, maybe on Thursday night, no better pairing for that than our friends at Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company right there in Athens. It is good cold beer. It is a great choice for the holiday weekend, for the football. You're going to watch the big games on Friday night, whatever you're doing. Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company goes great with that. Good cold beer. Make sure you check out some today. Mike, on a different topic before I let you go. 7-0 Georgia basketball tonight begins SEC play, Stegman Coliseum against Mississippi State. I don't quite yet know what to make of this team because obviously, you're paying attention to both the wins that Georgia's gotten, but the schedule that it's played. But certainly 7-0 gets your attention, and a chance to get an SEC win tonight would be a pretty big deal here. Tell me what you've seen from Georgia thus far and what you expect as the Dogs start their SEC run here tonight.
Well, the irony is I think the Georgia fans are going to be chanting, just like basketball, because Georgia's already beat Cincinnati in basketball, believe it or not. And that's been their best basketball win of the year. Cincinnati was top 80. Listen, they haven't really played anybody. If we're going to be honest, let's be honest. They haven't really played anybody. Cincinnati's the best team they beat in basketball to this point. They're getting into SEC play. This is the reminder of the Beanie Bulldog game. When some Georgia fan, we think it was a Georgia fan, I don't know, threw the Beanie Bulldog out there at the free throw line when a Mississippi State guy was out there, and Ben Howland in Mississippi State escaped Tom Crean's Bulldogs with a victory because somebody threw a Beanie Bulldog on the court. We're going to find out a lot more. This is year 3 for Crean, and every year's been a rebuild, right? I think he took over a horrible culture. I think Mark Fox I know he was a good coach. I saw him coach. I talked to people, but the players that were left over weren't winners. They just weren't. Like, you would ask them about losses, and they would talk about how many rings there were in the tree or something like that. You're like, what are you thinking, man? Like, are you not upset? But now, I do think he's got 8 new guys. He's had to get old quick. A lot of these guys, a couple grad transfers, a couple JUCO transfers, and it kind of looks like a hodgepodge. And you're throwing Severe Wheeler out there, who's just an incredible point guard, and asking Severe to pull this all together. And that's kind of what it is. Now, how far along have they come with the 7-0 record? I think they've come far enough that they'll be competitive. I don't know that they're world beaters yet, but Crane runs good stuff. Georgia guys get open shots. Are they talented enough to knock down the three at a 34 to 36% clip? Because if they do that last year, they win 22 games, right? And they're a legit NCAA tournament team. The reason that they have not been winning is they don't make baskets. It's very elementary. You don't need to really be too much of an analyst to say, this team shoots good, this team doesn't. Crean runs good enough stuff to get his guys open shots in the half court. He also presses tempo, which is exciting and fun to watch. I mean, he's a good coach, but do they have good enough players? That is yet to be determined. So I will definitely be tuned in to watch the Battle of Bulldogs tonight at Stegman Coliseum. Just get another clue, just another hint. How real could this Georgia basketball team be? Could it be enough to pique the interest of so many of these Bulldog fans that are going to be hungry and left waiting for more after Kirby Smart and JT Daniels beat Cincinnati by 4 touchdowns?
Mississippi State 5-3 on the year, by the way, coming in tonight. Mike, good to have you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. Look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, B.A. Have a good one, man.
Thank you.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Mike apparently working a little blue there for a moment. I guess Todd Monken gets in the press conference yesterday, letting some colorful language fly. Now everybody wants to do that. Nonetheless, Georgia tonight against Mississippi State. I do think this team has a lot of energy. We'll bring that music down just a little bit. I do think Georgia has a lot of energy with the way that it plays, and I think it's regular SEC network tonight. So tune in for yourself and see what the Dogs bring to the table. Trying to go 8-0 in the season and get their first SEC win of the year. That should be a lot of fun. As we transition here to our SEC through, we'll do today what we normally do on Tuesdays, My Bookie Best Bets. By the way, we'll pick all of these games this week as a part of Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews. A look at all of the big bowl games for the next couple of days, including the one that takes place tonight. Georgia and Cincinnati, of course, the Bearcats a 7-point underdog there in that game. I like Georgia here. I don't have a fully formed opinion on this game as of yet. I told you before that I think one of the edges for the Dogs may be the running game, which I know not people want to hear. They want to see Daniels throwing the ball all over the yard, maybe get a chance to do that. But if you look at Cincinnati, one of the places where they did show up a little less than perfect against Tulsa, which is probably a better team than some people give them credit for, gave up some rushing yards. Even with kind of a new look offensive line, that could be an opportunity here for Georgia. But obviously, Georgia fans hope it's also the chance to put the ball in the air there some too. And for a Georgia defense that's struggled at times against good quarterbacks, Desmond Ridder obviously comes in with some accolades and some impressive stats. A chance for this Georgia defense to finish on a pretty strong note. The game tonight is interesting. It's Cotton Bowl with Florida against Oklahoma. Gators actually an underdog in this game, 3.5 points. We played some audio for you off the top of the show of guys like Kirk Herbstreit, David Pollack saying, "Oh, you don't want to play Georgia right now." The other team that has been paired with Georgia in that discussion has been Oklahoma. Sooners clearly were playing better at the end of the season. And so Florida, with the opt-out of Kadarius Toney, the opt-out of Trevon Grimes, that's obviously factoring into the perception here on this game as a MyBookie best bet with the Gators as a 3.5-point underdog. One of the things that I think is interesting, I'm going to get more to this in one of the games in a moment, is there's been a lot written, 538, the analytics site did a story on this the other day, about longtime college football gamblers who've essentially thrown up their hands this year and said, I can't pick these games, it's just too weird of a season. The one thing I have heard from the gambling community, though, and I follow a lot of these knuckleheads on Twitter, the one thing I have heard from the gambling community related to college football this year is that the one mistake that has commonly been made by a lot of people is assuming that a huge number of absences, player absences, means that a team is doomed. That unless it's a star quarterback, for the most part, we have a tendency to overrate those absences. Now, there are examples like when Jordan Davis doesn't play for Georgia, when Richard LeCounte doesn't play for Georgia. Maybe those are bigger than normal type absences. Maybe that's the case, but largely speaking, the gambling community is kind of starting to understate the importance of some of these absences. So we'll see for Florida tonight without some wide receivers what that means. I guess some defensive guys too, maybe for the Gators as well. Mississippi State hosts Tulsa. Bulldogs actually an underdog here in this game. Tulsa, I said, probably better than you realize. They're 2.5-point favorite there. Auburn against Northwestern. Northwestern a 3-point favorite. Auburn expected to be down a bunch of guys. Auburn may be my number one play of the bowl season, though. I loved them last year against Purdue, and they absolutely waxed the Boilermakers there. I think they could be not a blowout win against Northwestern, but Auburn could be the sneaky good play of the bowl season here. Keep your eye on that. Kentucky, 2.5-point favorite against NC State. I don't have much to say about that. Interesting to see Indiana as big a favorite as they are against Ole Miss. 8.5 is a lot of points, but I've come to believe that Tom Allen's team, the Hoosiers, is actually pretty good. Even without Michael Penix, the quarterback, defensively, the Hoosiers just played pretty well. So not quite sure what to do with that as of yet, but noticeable to see the Big Ten team such a big favorite over the SEC side there. Orange Bowl shows you Texas A&M against North Carolina. It's the Tar Heels here who have a bunch of opt-outs, although A&M is starting to deal with some of those. They are, North Carolina, a 7.5-point underdog in the game. I do like Texas A&M a lot in this spot. That's even before the opt-outs there. I just think the Aggies are a good team, better than they've been given credit for. I thought they should have gotten more playoff discussion. I know sometimes we think of this as the letdown type team, the team that kind of finishes in that 5 spot that doesn't get that playoff love. Somehow I think that Texas A&M may find a way to avoid that. You're talking Fiesta Bowl, Iowa State against Oregon. Cyclones 3.5-point favorite there. Hard to know much about Oregon. They just haven't played very much football. Then you get to the two playoff games. Alabama against Notre Dame. Hard to believe that a playoff game, or really any bowl game, sees a 20-point spread, but I don't know that you can make this one high enough. I have almost no belief whatsoever that Notre Dame can do anything to keep this close. They just never seem to. And then Clemson, Ohio State, to me, is pretty interesting. I think there is a case for the underdog here. First of all, the spread is only 7 points, but I believe there is a bit of a case for the Buckeyes to make it closer than the experts think against Clemson, and then we'll see what happens after that. But a fun slate of bowl games over the course of the next few days. It's obviously Georgia on Friday. It kind of gets going with Florida tonight, and then a couple of those games, Fiesta Bowl, whatnot, those will take place there on Tuesday. It's our MyBookie Best Bets. I told you this yesterday. I'll remind you quickly again. You can get the big 50% deposit bonus from our friends at MyBookie right now. That means you put $100 in your account, they're going to put $50 in there for you. You put $1,000 in your account, they're going to put $500 back in there for you. I think you can get up to $1,000 on this, so use the promo code DawgNation. Here's how it works. Just type in MyBookie in your browser. The internet will do the work for you. Then you use the promo code DawgNation. After that, you play, you win, you get paid. It's that simple. Winning season at MyBookie. Big first deposit bonus to get you going for what should be a fun bowl weekend. Then you can roll right into the NFL playoffs after that. Check them out, MyBookie, but just make sure you use the promo code DawgNation. By the way, as we get ready to wrap up here, speaking of that game between Ohio State and Clemson, very interesting insinuation from Ohio State coach Ryan Day. Now, we've heard a lot from Dabo Swinney as of late about his belief that Ohio State didn't play enough games to make the college football playoff, and to Dabo's credit, he has not backed down from this. But an interesting retort from Ryan Day, essentially insinuating that Clemson's been stealing defensive signals. Now, come to find out, there's been actually a lot more written about this than I realize, and I just didn't know it. I think Pat Forty's written about this. Athlon Sports had this as a part of their college football preview magazine a couple of years ago, that this notion that Clemson stealing signals is out there. Now, I think it's a complicated topic. I don't know that it's always cheating necessarily, but an interesting insinuation from Ryan Day, so keep your eye on that. By the way, I'll remind you once again, Eddie is back on Monday. Gator Hater strikes back on January 4th. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Harrah's Cherokee Casino Resort. And on video. Time now for our RS Andrews Cooldown, where we'll take your comments on anything from today's show. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. You can trust RS Andrews to do all of that for you. Just simply find them online at rsandrews.com, and they will take good care of you. Heating system, you want to make sure it's running the way that it's supposed to for the winter that is still yet to come here this year. Get your system tuned back up to factory fresh specs today, and they'll take care of you on that. All right, I did Facebook first yesterday. Let me do YouTube first today, and it's going to take me a second to pull these up, but we'll get that going. I've also got to get off the air here after just a few minutes' time today, because we have got a big broadcast scheduled the rest of the week. We've got to record some stuff today. Sometimes we have some behind-the-scenes stuff that makes doing a bunch of comments not the easiest thing to do, so we will do that with you a little bit later on. Scott Pete says, I hope Clemson crushes Ohio State. Stealing signals is part of the game. Yeah, as I said during the regular broadcast, I think this is kind of a complicated topic, and for me, it comes down to technology, right? That if you're on second base and you're staring in the catcher and you pick up on his signals and then you relay that to the batter, I think that's absolutely part of the game. I'm with you on that. It's the same thing in college football. Let's say that you're on the sideline and you see what it's usually like somewhere like a yellow hat or somebody like that, whatever signals they're sending in. If you can decipher what they're doing, I think that's also kind of part of the game, and I'm kind of okay with that too. It's when you start using technology that I have a problem. Astros sign stealing, with all the elaborate mechanisms they went through to do that. That, to me, is actual cheating. It's the use of technology that, to me, makes the difference. Some of the stuff that the New England Patriots have been accused of doing kind of goes from being just traditional gamesmanship to actually outright cheating. So whatever may or may not have happened with Clemson, that, for me, is the line of demarcation. If you're simply picking it up by being observant, then clearly that's your information to use, I believe. But if you're using unusual technology to get that done, maybe even including someone in the stands trying to help you with that. At that point in time, I think that you're either violating the rules or at the very least the spirit of the rules, and that's kind of where I draw the line on that. I think it's Chol here on YouTube. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's very nice to say, and I hope I pronounced your username correctly. G. Grace Bambi Boy on the subject of Justin Fields. Yeah, I'm a little interested to see Fields against Clemson because, and listen, I'm a big fan of Justin's. I've said that many times. I like watching him play. I think he's a very good quarterback. He has faced a little bit of criticism here as of late, and some of this is related to what a lot of analysts are saying. He holds the football too long, and I think if you're Justin, you have a reason to do that because you know what kind of athlete you have at receiver, and plus, I think you also trust your own athleticism, your ability to elude, pass rush, arm strength, things like that. But we've been told on TV now over and over again that's not a very good NFL trait. So Justin kind of goes into this game with that in mind. There's also some chatter that he might not be the second quarterback taken in the draft now. That was it Terry Wilson is that his name, from BYU, that he's kind of moved up these draft boards a bit after the way that he played the other day. All of a sudden, Justin kind of has a little bit of maybe something to prove against Clemson. So I think that makes that aspect of the game a bit more interesting, what Justin goes out there and does. And stupidly, people will connect this to the fact that Dwayne Haskins got recently released from the Washington Redskins. There's not a very, or I should say the Washington football team, excuse me. There's not a great history recently of Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that's a dumb thing to try to connect to Justin Fields. Someone probably will try to do that. And I think it's all the more reason why I'm sure Fields wants to go out, in addition to just the normal motivation, but wants to go out there and play well against Clemson coming up in the college football playoff. Scott Pete says the North Dakota State quarterback's a first-round quarterback as well. Yeah, so I saw him play. They played like the one-game season as a kind of a showcase for him, and that's probably, is it Trey Lance? Is that his name? It's probably an unfair spot to put him in that one-game spot, but I tell you all this all the time. Don't treat me as a scout. I don't want to be treated as one, but I didn't think he looked good at all. I just didn't. To me, it was completely inexplicable that he was a first-round type talent at quarterback. Now, maybe he's got all kinds of film that's different than the one game I saw from him this year, but he barely threw it. I mean, he was running all over the place. He is a good running quarterback, but, I mean, he just didn't throw the ball much in that game. I didn't understand Trey Lance in the first-round quarterback conversation really at all based on the one game that I saw from him in the showcase that he played. Was that against? I forget who it was against, but it was just not a very impressive performance. So maybe Lance is a much better prospect than I realized, but in the one game that I saw him this year, I didn't really see what all the fuss was about. DMart42 says that Jones and Trask are also quarterbacks in the first round, and it certainly seems likely that's the case. I have a weird hang-up about both of them, though, and this very well may be just outright foolish bias, but the notion that Trask nor Jones would have really been on my radar prior to the start of the season, am I really to believe that things could change that quickly? Now, folks will say, well, that's exactly what happened to Joe Burrow a year ago, and I guess from that standpoint, that's probably true. But I'm a Falcons fan, right? If the Falcons were to draft a Jones or certainly a Trask, I just don't think I'd be very excited about that at all. I just don't think I would. And as I said before, that may just be kind of a foolish bias because they both clearly put up big numbers. But I'm still not quite as sold on both of them. I mean, frankly, depending where Atlanta kind of falls in the draft, and some things have happened lately there where they have a chance to move up, if somehow Fields could fall to Atlanta, I'd be really excited about that. Speaking of the Dwayne Haskins thing, Alan McGovern here on Facebook says that Washington said that Haskins couldn't read defenses and other major issues, and Day was there as his offensive coordinator. I understand where you're coming from on that, and I do think it is probably true that when you have a good offensive mind, and I believe that Day is, that you can make things easy for a guy, especially if you've got elite talent around you. But ultimately, I think that Haskins' failings at Washington are probably more on Haskins himself than they are on the history of Ohio State quarterbacks, including the ones that have been tutored by Ryan Day. I think that the Haskins situation is a disaster, but I think that's a disaster that Haskins himself has to own more so than anything related to the Ohio State lineage of quarterbacks or Ryan Day as a quarterback tutor. I mean, I think that Day did his job with Haskins, got him into the first round, and now it's Haskins' job after that to capitalize on an opportunity. I feel the same way by Jimbo Fisher. Some of y'all know I like Fisher as a coach. If you look at a lot of the quarterbacks he put into the first round, even going back to Jamarcus Russell as his days as an offensive coordinator, a lot of those guys did not have great success once they got to the NFL. E.J. Manuel, Christian Ponder, whichever side of the Jameis Winston's discussion that you're on, a lot of the quarterbacks that Jimbo Fisher tutored turned into first rounders. A lot of them haven't gone on to have great success in the NFL, but I don't blame Fisher for that. Fisher's job is to get these guys paid. And then if those guys want to be great beyond that, I think it's their job to do with their own talents what they have the opportunity to do once they get into the NFL. So I don't put a mark against Day for the performance of Haskins, and it would not scare me away from drafting Justin Fields. If I was a Falcons fan, as I said before, the idea that you could get Fields back in the state of Georgia and some of the stuff that could have happened for him in a Georgia uniform, I don't want to relitigate the history on that, but there was obviously a chance that he could have had great success here, and for a lot of reasons it didn't work out. To think you might get a second chance of that with the Falcons, for those of you who are also Falcons fans, I would take that as a pretty happy ending to that story. Randy Hall and Santiago Dion are talking about something related to Eddie. I'm not quite sure what that is. Yacoba Simba says even the dude before Haskins was such a bust. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Cardell Jones. I mean, in Jones' case, I mean, he kind of probably rose up the draft ranks pretty quick. Is it Jones that was before Haskins? Is there somebody in between that I'm not thinking about there? And I know you had, a couple of guys there at that same time. So listen, it is definitely going to be noticed, that recent track record for Ohio State, but it would not scare me off Justin Fields. Paul Baker says, who will be missing on our defense in the bowl game if Davis plays? I understand they'll be maybe getting yards of the middle. This is a very good team. Dogs are playing. We got to make every down count. I think we'll close until late in the second half with our depth could make a difference. I think that evaluation, Paul, may be pretty good. As you said before, you're hopeful on Jordan Davis here in this spot. I guess you're assuming he will play. Spoke to reporters the other day. Richard LeCount, I know he's really trying to play. I hate to be the Grinch that stole Christmas here, but ultimately I don't quite think that LeCount's going to be a huge factor in this game, even if he does take a couple of snaps. We know that Eric Stokes is not playing. Monty Rice has made it official that he's not playing. Rice has missed enough time for Georgia now that you've seen what Georgia looks like without Monty. He's important, but Georgia's played Quay Walker plenty. Obviously, Nakobe Dean's on the field most of the time anyway. Channing Tindall's gotten some nice run towards the end of the season there as well. So you've got some key names we know for sure are not playing, and then we'll just kind of see, how much guys like Campbell and Davis, how much guys like that really do play. All right, a couple more minutes. We're going to get ready to go. Yeah, Michael Webb talking more about the quarterback situation there. Let me go over to YouTube here for a moment. Ace Dog, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Paul Taylor says big old 99 is going to have a big game. I was telling Connor Ronnie this the other day off the air. I think that Jordan Davis is one of my favorite players in recent Georgia history. I think he's got a great personality. He's kind of a funny guy. He used to do this thing. I videoed this one time and put it on my Twitter feed where he would run over to the band and take a selfie with the band. He's just a fun dude, and he's a very good player. I agree with what one of our Facebook commenters said a moment ago, that he's as pivotal for Georgia as really anybody. And I've been saying this now for a while. I've been on the Jordan Davis train for a couple of years. The defense is just really different without him. It's one of the things that concerns me about Georgia in the post-Jordan Davis world of whether that comes this year or the year after that. I'm sorry, whether that comes in 2021 or 2022. who is going to be that new kind of nose guard in that void? It is not an easy position to fill. I did like some of the experience that Georgia got for guys like, say, Zion Logue as an interior defensive lineman over the course of the season, but one day Davis is going to have to be replaced, and it's not going to be an easy thing to do. Johnny Lester says, I'm disappointed that we haven't recruited a replacement for Davis. Yeah, I think that's not and look, it's just hard to find guys who successfully fill that void as well as Davis does. Interior defensive linemen are just really hard to come by, whether it's like the athletic, Brian Brzee 3-technique style guy, or the more over the center type guy, the way that Jordan Davis kind of plays. Those are just not easy guys to find. I think that Georgia's got some real potential there. I think Warren Brinson's got some potential in a similar role, as I mentioned before. I think Zion Logue has kind of come on a bit as of late. But Davis was good fairly early in his freshman season, and it is not obvious right now who is the next in the line in that spot. From that standpoint, I do agree with you. Tim Harrell says, do you think we have any guys that are on the fence about leaving depending on their play in the Peach Bowl? I definitely think that Georgia has guys on the fence, I would suggest. I don't know that the Peach Bowl is going to be the indicator one way or another there, because if you're a draft prospect, if you have a bad game against Cincinnati, I don't know that's going to make an NFL team not want to draft you. In fact, I assume it probably won't factor in there very much at all. And let's say a guy has a great game. Well, people like me may hype that up as NFL potential, but the draft scouts themselves will take a lot more long-range view over what the player really brings to the table. So I don't know that the bowl itself is going to sway somebody one way or another. It might, but I doubt that it will. But I think there are guys on the fence, maybe even Jordan Davis himself. And I think some of this kind of comes down to there are guys who really like college, but their draft opportunity is, I think we've seen this before where, okay, so it may not be exactly what you want it to be. You're not a first rounder, but you also may not have a great opportunity to raise that draft stock with one more year in a Georgia uniform. Sometimes that may be true, and that may be one of the things that causes a guy to go. Obviously, selfishly, if you want to talk about just Davis in particular here, I would really love for him to stay because, as a lot of our commenters have said, he changes everything for the Georgia defense, and it's not obvious that Georgia has someone right now who could do what he does. So pretty clearly that would be a real value, and I would say that if you're thinking about guys who might be on the fence, he may be one of those guys. Do we presume the same thing about Tyson Campbell because he's playing in a way that Eric Stokes is not? Maybe that's the case, but ultimately a lot of that ends up being a degree of speculation. But one way or another, the initial part of your question, are there guys who are on the fence who could make either decision? I would imagine there probably are some of those guys right now. Richard D says, I wish the Falcons could somehow get Deshaun Watson. I totally agree with that. When you think about the still relatively young quarterbacks in the NFL, I still am very high on Watson. I think he's been hamstrung with an awful situation there in Houston. I think we're starting to find out just how bad that is with the Texans. But I think in a better situation, Watson could be a very successful NFL quarterback, and that's also kind of a second chance situation. I'm from Gainesville, so Deshaun Watson's always going to be a little bit of a hometown hero for me. So I'm playing high school football and basketball many times. But the point is that I totally agree with you that Watson, I think, is an underrated NFL player and a guy that could have great success in a different situation. Let's see what else. Nature Gator says Davis plays a position of high value for NFL teams. He clogs the middle and opens gaps for other players. He would go high in the draft. Yeah, I mean, some of the early – I haven't really obsessed over mock drafts recently, but some of the early ones that I looked at, and early ones can be notoriously wrong, but some of the early ones I saw had him listed somewhere in that, like, top 3 interior defensive lineman – range, and I just don't know how much you can improve on that. And I'm not saying that I'm wishing him out the door, but becoming what Javon Kinlaw became for South Carolina, where Kinlaw exploded for a whole bunch of tackles for loss in his last year in 2019, or the kind of interior pass rush that Derek Brown at times showed himself to have for Auburn. Davis may be just below that threshold, but as Nature Gator said, he's a terrific run stopper and he's an above-average pass rusher at the very least. NFL teams are going to really like him. He also seems to be in really good shape for a big guy, and NFL teams kind of like that too. I agree with Green Soldier. He says A&M got screwed. I definitely think that A&M deserved more playoff consideration than they got. As I said, I think I said this on Monday's show, that their best win, the win against Florida, looks better at the end of the season. The way that Georgia's playing now, the fact that Florida kept it close against Alabama, Notre Dame's best win looks worse now. Yes, they beat Clemson. At the time, we gave them credit for it. DJ Uiagalelei is a capable quarterback, but clearly the Tigers are way different when Trevor Lawrence is under center, and therefore I would say the Notre Dame win against Clemson is devalued at least some. And the whole Ohio State thing, only playing 6 games, that's a little bit of a frustrating conversation too, although I'm not surprised they make the college football playoff. Our buddy G. Grace Bama Boy's in here right now. Ultimately, I don't know that any of this matters. I just don't know that Alabama's capable of playing a close game. I just don't know that they are. Maybe Clemson can do that. This Alabama team is just so good offensively. Joel Moody says, and we'll get ready to go after this. Yeah, we got to. Who's your breakout bowl game player for Georgia? I'm going with Darnell Washington. I do think Darnell is a pretty interesting answer there because I think that he's now been here for a year. I think that Georgia probably does. I know this was a hot topic after the Missouri game. I think that Georgia probably does want to showcase the tight end for a Rick Gilbert, who I do believe is in play for the Dogs, at least a strong possibility of it, if nothing else. So I think that Georgia probably does want to showcase that, and I think that Washington is probably just ready. It was not a surprise to me that Darnell was slow in being used in a big way in this offense. I just think it's a lot to ask for a freshman, even someone who had the physical gifts that he had. But now we are at the end of the season. I would say that certainly giving him some targets, giving him a chance to show what he's all about, I would say that's a strong possibility for that game. And, maybe there's another, you heard JT Daniels mention Arian Smith by name during the press conference yesterday. Maybe there's a chance that Arian Smith gets some of that action too coming his way, because I know that he is chomping at the bit to be on the football field some more against the Bearcats on Friday. Either way, it should be fun to watch, and I'll have fun talking to you all about it over the course of the next couple of days here. Thanks for being here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. Big thanks to our friends at RS Andrews for making the RS Andrews Cooldown possible. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. You can trust RS Andrews to do all of that for you. If your water heater goes out, in many cases they'll replace it for you the same day. You can just simply find them online at rsandrews.com. Also, don't forget to check out RS Andrews Go with the Flow a little later on this week as we look forward to making our picks for the top bowl games of the upcoming few days. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily, presented by Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. I look forward to talking to you then, everybody.